For today's bottom of the barrel game, we're playing I Spy. So why don't you join me by seeing how many things this game does wrong and how many it does right. My name is Graeldon and I'm reviewing Steam games in alphabetical order to find the hidden gems among the piles of garbage, and today's game is One Moment of Time, Silentville. Let's begin. Driven by greed, a man's obsession with gold causes his wife to leave him, taking his children along with her. While overcome with grief, his workers come across an ancient ruin that holds the secret to reversing time. However, the ritual goes astray and the town is now locked in a temporal bubble, reliving the same moments over and over again. This is Silentville, and you have arrived here in pursuit of the mystery surrounding this town. And somehow your incredible I Spy skills will save this town? I guess? Anyway, this is One Moment of Time, Silentville, which released in 2016 and is developed by two monkeys. Not literally two monkeys, that would be weird, but possibly would have improved the final product. In terms of gameplay, this is a mix of hidden objects and point-and-click adventure genres, which on the surface doesn't sound too bad. However, games like these tend to live or die by their art and their narrative, and sadly, Silentville does neither of these particularly well. Let's take a quick look at the title screen and options menu before we dive in. Here you go. Alright, we've seen everything, so let's move right along. Okay, so it seems we're fortunate enough to have been graced with separate music and sound effect sliders, but despite the presence of voice-acted dialogue in cutscenes, there's no slider for that. The only graphical option is a single checkbox for full screen mode, not even any resolution settings. But we do have a custom cursor, which we are of course going to leave on because how on earth could you truly get immersed in an experience like this without it? Jokes aside, this is a pretty poor excuse for an options menu, but at least the layout and design are appropriate to the theme of the game. I just wish this train attendant that looks like a pre-death Hancock from Fallout 4 would stop staring at me from behind the menu. As you'll see in the background, all of the characters have this weird yellowness to their skin, lending a more than likely unintentional creepiness to every interaction and making me wonder if the entire town's population has jaundice. Moving right along past this weirdness, let's get into the game. Our unnamed character, henceforth known as Larry, arrives in town on a train, only to immediately be caught in the weird temporal bubble and become trapped. For an unexplained reason, the train suddenly becomes surrounded by vines, and Larry's hands, and presumably the rest of him as well, begin to age, leaving us stranded and confused on the train station platform. And already I have questions, like, are you trying to imply that this is the first train to attempt to pass through this town in who knows how long? What happened to everyone else on the train? And if time is frozen and or looping, why am I being aged? As you may have guessed, none of these questions will be answered. This is the beginning of the adventure though, so a tutorial is offered that explains the basic controls, shows you how to move around, and introduces you to the mechanics of the hidden object scenes. Each of these areas has a list of items to find. Some of these are immediately available, some require you to interact with a specific part of the environment, such as opening a cupboard door, and some need items to be used together, either because they are parts of a whole, or because using A with B will make C. The art in the scenes is, well, jumbled, but not in the way I think they intended. After looking around each scene for a couple of minutes, it becomes pretty apparent what is part of the general scenery and what is an object that has been overlaid on top of it. This overlaid art ranges from well blended to obnoxiously out of place. An example of a blended item is the word Arthur scratched into a rusty metal pipe. An example of a terrible item is this mouse that may or may not have PTSD. I think a lot of the issues are due to a combination of fidelity, strange shadows, disproportionate objects, and odd perspectives. That said, some of the items are infuriatingly difficult to find. A few cheeky ones were found at the bottom of the screen, partially obscured by the UI, and some of them, like trying to find a missing sunglasses lens, were just outright evil. Seriously, there is a black lens somewhere in this image. Feel free to pause and find it if you want. I guarantee you won't be able to. Actually, Ty, can you please zoom in the image to make it easier? Okay, now zoom in again. Still can't see it? Okay, Ty, Please add an arrow now. Yeah, that little semicircle sticking out from behind the mannequin, that's the missing lens. Of course it is. Thankfully, you do have access to hints that will recharge over time once used, and these were the only thing that allowed me to get through a couple of absurdly difficult puzzles. It should also be mentioned that there is an expert mode that describes itself as Mind Breaker mode, that disables hints completely. If you, for some inexplicable reason, decide to try this game, please take my advice and just play the normal mode. What little remains of your sanity will thank me later. In addition to these puzzles, there are also a handful of minigames spread throughout the game that are a welcome change of pace. Or at least they would be if they didn't yo-yo between stupidly simple and aggravatingly hard. There are a few similar ones that involve rotating tiles to form a path, such as leading a train to a station, lining up gunpowder, or creating a network of pipes, which are short and sweet, and then there is this rock throwing minigame that is thankfully only used once. It's like it was trying to be Angry Birds or something, but the physics and controls are so awful that it'll be down to trial and error. The only saving grace is that you have unlimited attempts, because being forced to start over after managing to lower 3 of the 4 baskets would have been a deal breaker for me. Moving on, completing the hidden object stages will usually reward you with an item that will be needed to solve a puzzle in the wider town, allowing you to explore and uncover new areas and characters to speak to. In this manner, the entirety of the town is slowly revealed, as is the mystery of how the town was cursed. As the only person not stuck in a time loop, it falls to Larry to undo the mischief that the god Loki caused by performing the ritual correctly, and therefore free the town. While the progression will typically keep you moving forwards, there are a couple of times where you need to backtrack and find another item in a hidden object area that you completed previously. You're not told you need to do this, and you're never told that these scenes might be used more than once, so I was wandering around Lost for a long time, mostly because I thought they were a one and done deal, but also because I was too stubborn to use a hint to proceed. That's about all there is to the game, really. You're mostly just wandering around, clicking randomly, and looking for the next thing to interact with. That said, some of the puzzles are really well thought out, such as one sequence that requires you to find the missing parts of a broken key, create a mold, and then use a machine to make a replica of the key. That's a nice logical sequence of events, right? So, when one puzzle required me to find a way past a vine that was holding a gate shut, but not by using an axe, a gardening implement, or even matches to burn it, but instead requiring me to retrieve a ring from a river, submerge it in acid to extract the diamond, attach the diamond to a protractor, use this device to remove perfect circles from mirrors scattered around town, then use said mirrors to repair a mechanism at the top of a lighthouse, and then use a rag soaked in kerosene that I pumped out of a barrel using a perfume sprayer that I stole from a store that I opened during the rock throwing minigame in order to light a fire at the top of a lighthouse, and use the mirror array to direct a high intensity beam of light onto the vines and burn them, you might be understanding of why I was yelling at Larry, why couldn't you just use the matches to do that? Also, if I got a cent for every game that featured a mirror array in it, I'd have 2 cents, which isn't much, but it is weird that it's happened twice already. Also, that's not how mirrors work. The setup shown here wouldn't be able to capture and magnify light, as we didn't use any focusing lenses, just flat mirrors. Anyway, all of that is to say, some of the puzzles are good, and some are just awful. Throw your logic out the window, and maybe your sanity along with it for good measure. Unlike the objects in the scenes of Silentville, this game is unable to stand out amongst the sea of other hidden object games available. The art is inconsistent, the music is as repetitive as the gameplay, and the puzzles range from simplistic to unfair, which results in the game somehow straddling the line of mediocrity, but burdened by a balance beam weighted towards one side that threatens to cause it to tumble right back down to the bottom of the barrel that I collected it from. That said, there's nothing inherently wrong or broken with the game, it just feels like there's a level of care and polish missing from the final experience, like corners have been cut in order to meet either a limited budget or a tight deadline. It's entirely possible that a number of assets in the game are actually free or bought pre-made objects that are cobbled together to make some kind of Frankenstein's monster constructed from scattered knickknacks instead of decomposing body parts, which actually sounds much better now I say it out loud. Anyway, a great example of this cost cutting can be found in the voiceovers scattered throughout the game. Upon rewatching the footage while writing this script, I came to the realization that it is highly likely that all of the characters and the narrator are actually all voiced by the same person, just pitched up or down slightly and with a different cadence to give the impression of a unique character. Have a listen to these different snippets and see if you agree.
Silentville was a small, undistinguished town, but most of all, it was silent.
Why, thank you, but you were away for so long that I just decided to quit smoking.
Sadly, there aren't any credits, so unless someone wants to do some sleuth work, we'll probably never know for certain. Hi everyone, Graeldon from the future here. Turns out I'm the world's worst detective because the credits are accessible from the main menu, they just don't play at the end of the game. That said, it turns out my instincts were right, as there is only one voice actor, Tim Simmons. And now, back to regular Graeldon. Still, it's actually more effort than Bethesda put into their voiced NPCs in the Elder Scrolls titles, where you can actually have two identically voiced characters have a conversation with each other. The fact that Silentville comes in at a very respectful and wallet-friendly price of $1.29 Canadian almost sways me to shine a more positive light on this title, but for me personally, the light is less of a lighthouse in the darkness and more of a weak, sputtering match in the face of an oncoming deluge of other hidden object games. If you're a fan of hidden object games, consider picking this one up if you see it on sale, as you'll get a competent experience and roughly 2 to 3 hours of playtime for your money. For everyone else, my final rating is a top hat, 3 sinking ships, a cockroach, a book of knowledge, a dueling pistol, 2 swords, a brown leather bag, and a guitar. Out of 10. Leave a comment if you found everything, but don't spoil the locations. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the end of the video. This week's Larry was sponsored by Azazel. There are thousands of Larrys in need, and becoming a member could help save one more from the threat of extinction. Larrys are allergic to death, and your support will help fund valuable research to create a better future for them all. I'd also like to say a special thank you to our 2 Knights of the Holy Grail, Freaky Feline and Loveheart Gonzi. And lastly, I want to thank you for joining me on this weird gaming adventure through the depths of Steam. If you made it this far, here's a sneak peek of the next game. And until next time, take care.